the thing I'll say about the Senators, these last 2 wins were great, right? You play that way, you can beat almost anybody any night because they're a skilled team. They're a talented team. What did they do the 2 games before that? They lost to Buffalo and the Islanders. This is what I can't still get over with this team is inconsistency is their kryptonite. Yeah. So great 2 games. Awesome. Beat Philly on Thursday.
On today's show, it's a game day preview. The Ottawa Senators back at home for a quick stop to take on the Philadelphia Flyers.
And we've got a special guest. We're talking stats with Mike Kelly from NHL Network and Sportlogiq.
That and more on today's Locked On Sens.
This is Brady Tkachuk, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today is Thursday, November 14th, and Pilsy, can the Ottawa Senators get their first 3-game win streak of the season?
Can they? Absolutely. This game is set up at home up against the Philadelphia Flyers team that, compared to the last couple of teams the Ottawa Senators have played, are not on the same level. However, Ross, I'm not going to lie. I'm a little nervous about this being a trap game and the Ottawa Senators biting the cheese and falling into that trap, because the way last week worked, Buffalo Sabres, that was a team that was down bad on a 3-game losing streak. The Sabres smacked them around 5-1. And then you say, okay, you're coming home. You weren't great on the road. You're coming home to the CTC up against a banged up Islanders team. The Islanders made the Sens look terrible at home, but the Sens switched it around. I'm a little nervous. That's all I'm going to say. I'm a little nervous the Sens fall into a trap game up against the Flyers.
We'll discuss that theory later, because I'm not starting a show when the Sens have won 2 straight, discussing the fact that you think this is a trap game for the Ottawa Senators. Focus on what's ahead for this team, a team that has dominated the last 4 periods. Frankly, that third plus overtime against Boston, and then all 3 periods, their best complete effort against a dismal performance from the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, the Senators go to try to get their first 3-game win streak since the last time they won 3 games in a row, Pilsy, was?
Last season.
When?
March.
You might remember when. The third win was against the Winnipeg Jets. We were there.
Ah, yes. And then we unfortunately saw that win streak come to an end in Minnesota. But yeah, that Jets game, that was a great win.
It certainly was. And they're looking to really just find consistency in their game. We'll talk about it with Mike Kelly. Did the underlying numbers show this to be sustainable? My answer is yes. You look at the way they're suppressing shots. They've dominated the tiltedness of the ice in the last few games. Sure, against the Boston Bruins, it was in the second, third, and overtime that they pulled away. But overall, like in their last 3 games, Pilsy, the Ottawa Senators have outshot their opponents by a combined double-digit performance. 105 shots for and only 68 against. Like, you're talking about stats and play, both on special teams and at 5-on-5, that show that this could be the start of a bit of a run, that all the fans and the players and the organization, like, how good would a 4-5, not to get ahead of myself, but how good would a 4-5, 6-game point streak be for this team?
Oh, it'd be great, Ross. And now you're starting to see this roster come together a little bit more like what we had hoped it would be. Artem Zub back in the lineup. That Sanderson-Zub pair is looking like they should look as a number 1 shutdown pair. And you got Shane Pinto back in as your third-line center. We all know how good this team is when you get glimpses of Norris Stützle and Pinto together. So this team's starting to hit their stride.
That's saying it lightly. The Ottawa Senators expect to line up the exact same way. Now, yesterday, the Senators had an off-ice workout. We heard from players like Michael Amadio, Nick Jensen. Travis Green spoke to the media as well, but no on-ice practice. We are unsure whether they'll have a morning skate as we are recording this here at 5 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday, November 13th. We want to get our game day previews out to you nice and early. We had Mike Kelly here, so we figured let's get this all packaged up for you and expect to see Josh Norris between Brady Tkachuk and Ridley Gregg. Tim Stützle centering Claude Giroux and Drake Batherson. Shane Pinto between Noah Gregor and Michael Amadio. Then the fourth line, Mr. Consistency, it is Adam Gaudette with Nick Cousins and Zach McEwen. On the back end, you've got Sanderson Zub, you've got Shabbat Jensen, you've got Clevin and Hamonic, and not sure yet who starts in goal, whether it'll be Linus Ullmark or Anton Forsberg. Pilsy, who is your locked-on player to watch?
My locked-on player to watch is going to be longtime Philadelphia Flyer Claude Giroux. Ross, Claude Giroux obviously hasn't played a lot of games up against the Philadelphia Flyers in his career. Only 6, but in those 6 games, 3 goals, 6 assists, good for 9 points. So above a point per game player up against his old squad in the orange and black. So I'm looking for Claude Giroux to keep things going and keep that second line of Giroux, Stützle, Batherson humming along nicely.
I was so close to swapping those top 2 lines. It just feels so weird having Tim Stützle on the second line. It would be almost as weird having Brady Tkachuk. You could have written it in hieroglyphics, chiseled it in stone that Brady Tkachuk's been the top line left wing almost every single game for the last 7 years on this team. But with the way Tim Stützle and that entire line with Batherson and Giroux looked, it feels so strange having those two as this, or those 3 as the second line. Giroux finally back on the score sheet. He had gone pointless in 5 straight games before this one. So we're hoping that Giroux keeps it rolling. Why not against the team that drafted him way back in 2006? I'm going to go with Shane Pinto. He had the 1 comeback game, still looked decent, but I'm expecting Shane Pinto to look more and more comfortable as things go along here. And we'll get to the Flyers in the final segment on today's show, but they are a team that does not have depth. They're in a little bit of a rebuild, we'll call it, and they've got their prospects coming. Matvei Michkov is a very exciting young player for them, but they're in this part of their cycle where their drafted players are still in London for the most part. I think they got 3 prospects with the London Knights, but their prospects for the most part are still up and coming. Their Jet Luchenko made the team out of camp after being the 13th or 14th overall pick in this draft, and he was just sent back to the OHL after a couple games at the NHL level. So depth is where I think Ottawa has the best opportunity to make this a lopsided event. And for that to happen, you look for Michael Amadio maybe to get to that 3-game goal streak. He's scored in back-to-back games. Noah Gregor's been really noticeable recently. And if Shane Pinto can come in and maybe get a point or 2, the Senators will be in a really good spot. So I'm going to be locked on to Shane Pinto tonight.
Yep, I like that. And there's no reason why, Ross, he can't feast on the bottom 6 of the Philadelphia Flyers. So I hope we start seeing Pinner look back to his old self as well.
There's a chance. I mean, we don't know anything beyond the fact that he's practiced the last couple of days at home. But David Perron, if he comes back in the lineup, we talked on yesterday's show that Nick Cousins would be our choice to come out. If that's the case, I mean, you're shaking your head. You changing your mind?
No. Go ahead.
Who do you move into Nick Cousins' spot? Do you get Perron a couple reps and ease him back in a 4th-line role? Or do you shake up another line to make the move to put Perron into a top 9 role?
This is a tough decision, Ross, which is a good problem to have. I'll stick with what I said earlier, even though Amadio has looked a lot better and scored a goal last night. I'm probably moving Amadio down to that 4th line and putting Perron in his spot on the 3rd line. I'm keeping the top 6 as it is. And the reason I choose Amadio over Gregor is I really like the speed element that Gregor brings to this team and to that third line. And I think especially if you're putting Perron on that line, you're slowing it down a little bit. Just he's a bit more of a veteran guy. And then Amadio can provide that kind of shut down defensive play on a fourth line while also being able to mix in some offense too.
I'm going to say move Noah Gregor down to that fourth line left wing spot and put David Perron on a line with Pinto and Amadio. I just think, yeah, you get this extra speed element with Noah Gregor, and I can appreciate keeping that together or wanting to. But I think that if you're looking a little more savviness on that line with Pinto, maybe open up some space. We know he likes to pop out and make quick shot decisions in the high slot. I think if you're looking at an offensive zone possession type line, you want to grind down on this Flyers team. Maybe you look to get Pinto, Perron, and Amadio all together.
Yeah, there's so many different ways you can do this, Ross. I don't think there's a wrong answer. And Travis Green and the coaching staff are going to have to play around with what they think is the best way to start when Perron comes back in. And then you'll see what works, what doesn't, who kind of deserves a little bit more ice time, or how you need to change the lineups here. But my main thing and the main takeaway from this conversation is leave the top six as is, because I think they've got it nice right now.
Even with Ridley Gregg, who has been noticeable in and out, but last night wasn't much of a noticeable game for him, or 2 nights ago rather, against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like, would that be a position that maybe if you're Travis Green, you look to find a new third guy with Norris and Tkachuk, or are you looking to build some chemistry and keep that together a little longer?
Yeah, that would be the one kind of direction you could take if you were going to switch up the top six, Ross. But I don't know who I elevate and put in that first line, second line, whatever you want to call it, in that top six right wing spot in Gregg's place. So for now, I'm leaving it like that personally.
It's a very novel concept for us to be looking at the Ottawa Senators and saying, oh man, defensively, they look so responsible. Graham Nichols just tweeted this out. In last night's game against the Leafs, the Senators gave up 0.7 expected goals at 5-on-5. That's not only the lowest expected goal total that Ottawa's given up this season, but it's the third lowest in a single game this entire season. How impressive is that?
That's very impressive. And I mean, that matches the eye test though, Ross. Like, to shut down the way that the Ottawa Senators have been shutting teams down analytically, even our friend Mike Kelly would probably tell us that makes a whole lot of sense.
Well, let's get to our conversation with Mike Kelly, and then we'll come back, chat about the Philadelphia Flyers, a team that has struggled to start the season. They are 6-8-2, coming off a win in their last game. But first, our conversation with Mike Kelly. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Select Quote. Select Quote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. Select Quote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that cost you more and cover you less. Not Select Quote, though. If you're in good health, they work with carriers that could get you same-day coverage for up to $5 million with no medical exam required. And these policies, they're more affordable than you think. You can get coverage for up to $1 million for as little as $20 per month. Head to SelectQuote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for you and your life. Select Quote. They shop, you save. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Go to selectquote.com/lockedonnhl today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Check it out today, guys. Select Quote.
Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. And get ready to tackle the NFL season, especially because, man, when all the games are going on at once, FanDuel is there for you. The Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets in one place. So if you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view play-by-play, and so much more on the same page that you make your bets. And because you're a new customer, you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So if you get the hunch in the middle of the game, visit FanDuel.com and join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, we now welcome a very special guest back to Locked On Senators for a third visit. You can find him pretty much everywhere. NHL Network, Sports on Prime, doing the hockey coverage there. He's also the Director of Analytics and Insights with Sportlogiq. Mike Kelly, welcome back to the show. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, Ross. Appreciate you having me.
Always. Really appreciate the time, and we know you're busy. What is your favorite part of work right now? What are you super passionate about?
Same thing as always. I'm endlessly fascinated by problem solving and just looking into stuff. You know, you mentioned the Sports on Prime stuff for tomorrow on the Amazon show. I'm looking at Cole Caulfield and you know, the scoring rate that he's got with 12 goals, how he's doing it. There's a pretty noticeable difference from last year and something that he's doing more than anyone else. So like getting to the bottom of those kind of things, it doesn't get old because it changes every year and within every year. And I haven't gotten bored of it since I was writing out line combinations in grade 4 at my desk. So I'm probably going to be good for another 30, 40 years.
Awesome. That'd be great. And we love having you on because you're someone that's very smart, that's able to tell people like Ross and I who are not very smart how to understand advanced analytics. Is there a new trendy advanced analytics stat going around in hockey that maybe fans that aren't deep into numbers like you are should be aware of?
I wouldn't say there's this new thing that's popped up in the last year that's, you know, groundbreaking. I mean, a lot of the things that have kind of always been true, and this goes back to before analytics, the things that have always been true are still true, right? You want to have the puck, you want to give up less than you create. There's all sorts of different ways to go about doing these things. And then obviously the players that you have dictate it as well. So that's what makes it endlessly fascinating. But one of the cool things now is in the last couple of years, the advent of the puck and player tracking with the chips and the jerseys and on the puck. There's some of that stuff publicly available. NHL Edge website has some. That's kind of really just scratching the surface of where this is all going to go, though, because there's so much more and there's so much more interesting information that can be mined out of this. So that's kind of where it's headed. In terms of what's new. But then again, there's the, you know, event data and the kind of stuff that we track at Sportlogiq. Some of it overlaps, some of it we have that they don't, vice versa. Getting to put those things together and kind of get the most holistic view of everything is really fun.
I think last time we had you on, there was all but 2 teams in the NHL getting the Sportlogiq package. Are we at 100% yet? Because it feels like eventually you have to understand that the micro data helps you win hockey games.
We're at 31 out of 32. We're at the 1 yard line. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's great that we've got that much trust, and a lot of these teams are, you know, what I would say long-term clients of ours. And it's, you know, it's a testament to the group we have at Sportlogiq. I work with so many smart people. It's incredible. And you know, I've got to learn so much from them over the years. And, you know, I think the results speak to it as well, but obviously I'm biased. We have the best services and data in the game of hockey, and I'm lucky to be a part of it.
And that's perfect transition, because one of your former colleagues, Sean Tierney, now working for the Ottawa Senators. What's been your take on how the Sens have played? I saw you're in the press box for one game. If I'm not mistaken, you brought your son to another. Wearing a Sens jersey. Can we confirm or deny this?
Yeah, I brought him to the Tampa Bay game in the afternoon, my daughter as well, and my wife. Tricky thing about him, he was born in Montreal when I lived there, right? And I grew up in the Ottawa area as a Sens fan as a kid.
Paul's Boatline alumni, right?
What's that?
Paul's Boatline alumni?
That's right. That is correct. Selling boat tickets. My son is a Maple Leafs fan.
Oh,
I know. But listen, so he says Maple Leafs first, Capitals second, Senators third. Those are his teams. And I got it out of him as to why. It's solely based on the logos. So he's 5.
That's fair.
Yeah. So at that Sens game, he was in his jersey cheering for the Sens, having a great time. Last night, he wanted the Maple Leafs to win. So when he woke up this morning, I was like, hey, you know what the score was? 3-0 Senators. And he's a little upset, but I'll get him switched over.
You give him the stat back, be like, you got to see the expected goals. So all Sens top 4 defensemen, they carry play. You got to watch it. Last time we had you on, Mike, you were talking about how Thomas Chabot was due to take a step.
Yeah.
Now he's got a really solid partner. What are you seeing from Thomas Chabot this season?
Yeah, well, look, he's more or less is what he is at this point in his career, right? Players of that age are, but he's always been a good player. He was put early in his career, as you guys know, like he's playing huge minutes, high leverage situations. He was their number 1 defenseman offensively, had to be by default defense, like in every way. And that's a lot to handle. So he's got a partner now in Nick Jensen, who I've liked for a long time, going back to when he was in Washington. I remember a trade deadline was coming up and the Leafs were looking at a guy, and I thought that would be a good fit. They went with Jake McCabe. I don't know if they even could have gotten Jensen at that point. He signed an extension with the Capitals, but anyways, here he is now. But he's always been somebody who is responsible, good defensively, just the kind of guy you'd want to put with a guy who can skate and do the things that Thomas Chabot can do. So those kind of archetype matchups don't always gel for whatever reason. This one is working really well.
Yeah, we've loved that pair this year. Mike, last night you tweeted out, Sens allow a season low 2 scoring chances off the rush against the Leafs. Just how much of a difference does that make to the Senators being able to improve their defensive structure, which has struggled a lot, when they're able to shut teams down on the rush? Like, what is it that they're doing that's allowing them to hold off teams on the rush, especially a team like the Leafs?
Yeah, well, so why it helps, like, first of all, the thing with Toronto this year, they're not generating a ton off the rush. They're dumping pucks in more. Like Craig Berube's tilted the way they play a little bit. They're giving up very little off the rush, so they're kind of gone low event. And it's hurting them offensively right now. And maybe it takes some getting used to, but that's just where they're at. So they're not this threatening rush team per se right now, but Ottawa has played some recently and done well against them. What does it do? Yeah, you're not in your own end defending when you can kill plays at or ahead of your blue line. How are they doing it? Like the Boston game, the Toronto game, they've got numbers almost always. And you don't get that unless you've got forwards who are tracking back through the neutral zone so that the D can gap up and you can kill those plays. And if it gets in, you've got guys back anyways to kind of eliminate that second wave of rush attack. They've done a really good job of that. So I give them credit. And, you know, Travis Green, kind of knowing him a bit, knowing how he coaches going back to his Vancouver days, like this is going to make him very happy when he sees those kind of efforts. The first 8 games of the year, like it said in the numbers, they gave up 63 rush chances. The last 7, they've given up 29. So kind of cut them in half. You're giving up that few. Yeah, you got your D zone to worry about, and teams are going to cycle the puck and work it around whatever, a certain amount of times a game. But those quick strike chances can really hurt you for sure. And Ottawa's taken those away in a big way. So hats off to them for being able to do it. The thing I'll say about the Senators, these last 2 wins were great, right? You play that way, you can beat almost anybody any night because they're a skilled team. They're a talented team. What did they do the 2 games before that? They lost to Buffalo and the Islanders.
Ugh.
This is what I can't still get over with this team is inconsistency is their kryptonite.
Yeah.
So great 2 games. Awesome. Beat Philly on Thursday. And who do they have on Saturday?
The team they haven't beaten, I don't think, twice in a decade, the Carolina Hurricanes. Who
So
they're still the analytic darlings, all this time later.
You want to play a pressure game and an overload game and a take rush away game. Like Carolina is the template.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there. Are they the analytics darlings? Like I never love that phrase because it can mean a lot of different things. Like you'd never say like, are they the eye test darlings? Right?
Yeah.
But
well, they're the draft darlings. Every draft, the public sphere just goes, they hit it out of the park again.
Yeah. Like I did a segment in like, someone sent me a picture of this like a year ago. I forgot I phrased it this way, I guess, but this was like 2017 or 18. And I said, I think they're fool's gold in a way where, yeah, they've got these great shot differentials and these great you know, a lot of areas and a lot of important areas analytically. And you look at what they've done in the regular season for a long time. They've been one of the best teams in the league year over year over year. They can never seem to score enough when it matters in the playoffs against tough teams, right? And who do they have that are their game breakers offensively? Marty Necas having a great year this year. Sebastian Aho is a phenomenal every facet of the game player. So, you know, I think there's a bit of like, I get in debates about this with people who work in analytics and work for teams and have that kind of background. It's not a right or a wrong answer, I don't think. I just have my view and they have theirs. But a lot of them will say, you know, I don't think there's much of a difference between the regular season and the playoffs. So you build your team a certain way, you're going to get a certain amount of cracks at it, and eventually you hope to break through. And that's how you kind of win a Stanley Cup. I think there are more meaningful differences between those two than others. And I don't think you can just build a team that can be successful year over year in the regular season and have it not make a difference in the playoffs. So anyways, a long-winded way of saying, I guess, I still think there are things that teams can do to improve for when it gets to that type of hockey, which I think is quite different in some ways.
Hope you're enjoying our chat with Mike. We'll get right back to it. But first, Pilsy's got a word from one of our favorite sponsors.
Yes, today's episode is also brought to you by Mary J's. They are a locally owned cannabis dispensary in the Ottawa area. Started off with 3 best friends making a life-changing decision and following their dreams. And through hard work and dedication, they now have 4 stores in the Ottawa area. You can check them out at Riverside South, Orleans, Greeley, and Russell. Mary J's offers the absolute best and newest products in the market, and they're adding new stuff to the menu every single week to keep it fresh. Mary J's offers competitive pricing. In fact, they're going to price match any store in Ottawa. That means you're guaranteed to get the best price around when you shop at Mary J's. Mary J's offers the best customer service by having the friendliest bud tenders who are always ready to help out. In fact, Dashy, one of the owners, diehard Sens fan, absolute beauty, is usually at one of the 4 stores. So go say what up to Dashy. Pick his brain about the Sens and all the latest, greatest products that Mary J's has to offer. And check out their website. Grab yourself a loyalty card as well. Check it out today, guys. Mary J's Dispensary.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Whenever I want to get into the action on the daily fantasy scene, I go to Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the spot to go when you want to get real money on sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win over 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You can win that money even if every one of your picks doesn't hit. That's because Prize Picks invented the flex play. So you can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prize Picks puts members first. All withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So go download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNHL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game.
We're a hashtag goalie friendly show here, Mike. So we're trying to dip our toes in advanced goalie analytics as well, which has been something that has really, from at least my opinion, come a long way in the last couple of years. What's kind of the golden standard advanced goalie analytics stat that you look at and you would encourage fans to understand a little bit better?
Yeah, so I look at, again, it's kind of like peeling an onion, right? Which is you start one place and you just go back until you can try to figure it out the best you can. I look at goals saved above expected. That's publicly available as well. We obviously have our own internal model for that. But what that does to the best of its ability is separate team defense from goaltending.
Yep.
And this is something that like a casual fan can still get mixed up in a lot, because you'd look at a team like the Rangers, who going into last night were second in goals against average, and you say, wow, they're a really good defensive team. They are not a good defensive team. They have a very good goalie.
Yeah.
you want to lump the goalie into team defense, then so be it. But it's important, at least when you start doing the kind of work I do, to try to separate these things to best understand them. The Senators have been quite a good defensive team this season overall. They have not had great goaltending overall. Well, Linus Hallmark's a really good goalie. We know he's going to figure it out. And maybe last night was the start of it. Once he catches up, and Forsberg's been, fine. Once that catches up to the team defense, they're really going to be good defensively, or have the potential to be. So that's why I look at goals saved above expected. It helps you separate those two things.
What else helps separate guys like us? It's hard to get away from that starter mentality. We just want to run with Linus Ullmark here, 8, 9, 10 games. Let him get into a rhythm. What do the numbers say about how you should differentiate from one goalie to the other on your roster?
Again, there's not a general rule because everybody's different. There's 64 different guys, right? But, and I've talked to goalies about this before as well. Like some goalies have said they want to play as much as they can. Some goalies have told me, I know that guy, he's great for 30 games. You try to do him 50, 55, it's not going to go well. So it is different case by case. A general rule, like in terms of averages, goalies on back-to-back nights have not done as well as they do with rest. I think that's kind of obvious. Linus Ullmark, hasn't had a lot of situations in his career where he's had to really run with the ball. Like the split that he had with Swayman in Boston was perfect for both of those guys. And they were among the best goalies in the league year over year. They were really good. Ullmark's a great goalie. Even going back to his Buffalo days, he was really good on a very bad defensive team. So I don't know. You kind of want to, if you can get the best of Ullmark every game, that's what you want to see if you're a fan, obviously. I don't know how practical it is, but Forsberg's played pretty well. This Philly game, I don't know if Travis Green said anything today or not, but I wonder if Forsberg will get Philly, and then you've got Ullmark with a bit of rest against the tough Carolina team.
Yeah, and I looked it up. The Sens have 14 wins in 39 games all time in Carolina. Like they've never been able to get it. Just one of those. That's the analytics we look at. Like, how's a goalie play against that team 6 years ago? Like, is the color of the jersey going to affect it? Pillsy even had a take when Ullmark struggled in a game. Ullmark has a road helmet and a home helmet right now. He thinks that could be the reason why he's struggling.
Different bucket. Hey, look, I bought a new helmet 2 weeks ago for men's league, and I've been on fire. So it's that could be a real thing.
Okay, Pillsalytics. Let's go. You got a final one for him, Brandon?
Carolina too. I'll say real quickly. You talked about them, and I was just saying how I kind of feel like they're built in some ways just for regular season dominance. Like they have looked nasty good this year. Yeah. And they might get through in the playoffs and do something great. And there's still the trade deadline and all that. But yeah, no, they've looked like better than most years this year, and they're good every year.
All right. Final question for me, Mike, and this has been awesome. We love having you on. There's been a lot of changes to the Ottawa Senators organization over this offseason. Do you think the change in the Sens being able to be a better defensive team comes more from coaching or from what the general manager has done with the roster?
If I had to pick one, I would probably say the coaching / player buy-in. They've added nice pieces, right? I think they very clearly made an effort to try to bring in some experience and people that have been through playoffs. And you look at, Cousins and Perron, and that seemed veteran guys. Like, I think they needed that as well as a group. But both to some degree, like they've got guys that are helping. Jensen, of course, like there's certainly guys that are helping them do this. I said this about a year ago, though, on radio in Ottawa, and I had fans just ripping into me for this. I said, because, DJ Smith, things weren't going well. They were giving up a ton of goals. I said, they're not as bad defensively as the market's making them out to be. Like, their goaltending has been crap. And they weren't an elite defensive team. Like, we're not Carolina in that sense, but I was like, if you want to put this on one thing, put it on the goalies right now.
Fair.
Yeah. And I think as the year kind of went on and Ottawa finished with the worst goaltending in the league last year by far, that proved to be more true than not. So I don't think the new coaching staff was coming in with this team that was like massively deficient defensively, but the improvements, especially like I said, the last 5-7 games, like, man, they're playing really well that way now. And now the only question is the one that has always been, like, can you just string some wins together and play that way consistently? Like their last 3-game win streak, I think the top of my head, 3 games is what you need to have a win streak. It's going back to March last season. So rip off 4, 5, 6, 7 in a row, play that way, and then, we'll see what's up.
2 summers ago, we had Keith Tkachuk on, and famously, he went on Toronto radio after 5 losses for the Panthers, spun their wheels. So at the end of the interview, I said, should we have you on after 5 losses or 5 wins? He said 5 wins, and I still haven't been able to reach out to him.
I hope Big Walt got a ring for that speech, because, like, man, did things flip after that for that team.
Yeah, well, he got a long-term deal for one of his sons to live in South Florida. So I think if you watch the Amazon video, I think he's enjoying that, no doubt. And the one here gave him a grandson as well. Final question from me, Mike. Tim Stützle is a top blank center in the National Hockey League. Because your friends at NHL Network, and I don't know if you're a part of this, had him 17th going into the season, which, look, he was underperforming last year. He'd be the first to tell you, only 18 goals. But when Sens fans see Nick Suzuki 1 spot ahead, they start to get a little antsy. So after what you've seen through the first 15 games and what you've known about his play over, I'm not asking for an exact number, obviously, but in what range would you have Stützle among the NHL's best center?
I'm an analytics guy, so I should give a number with a decimal point, probably. I think that's about right. And, without having a list of all these guys off the top of my head, like, he's not a top 10 center. No. I don't think he's 20th or worse. So given the kind of year he has, somewhere in the middle. Like, what I like about his game this year, because he is creative and offensively gifted and flashy, but you watch him, like, he's a little angry out there sometimes. Like, he'll run at guys, and he's got a little feistiness in him. He looks like a goon right now with his eye.
Yeah. But Terminator Timmy.
Yeah, exactly. But he, whether it's coaching and you always give players credit for them doing the things they're being asked to do. Like, he seems dialed into more areas of the game this year than last year. So you give him credit for that. But yeah, I'd comfortably say somewhere in that middle range of 13 to 19.
All right. Well, next time we have you on, we want that to be up in the top 10. But I appreciate that you noticed the physicality. I mean, you were at the game against Tampa where he ran over Ryan McDonough.
He looked real angry that day. I don't know if the early game he didn't want to get out of bed that early or what it was, but yeah, he's got some bite in him.
Yeah, it's awesome to see. Well, hey, we love reading your work and love trying to understand, and you do such a great job of giving it to the common man and in a way that we can understand. But really appreciate it, Mike. We look forward to following your work throughout the season, and hopefully we'll do this again down the road.
You got it, guys. Hopefully you get a win streak there so you can get Mr. Tkachuk back on.
All right, Pilsy, game day for the Ottawa Senators. It is a 7 o'clock puck drop at the Canadian Tire Center. Cannot wait for the postcast following a Thursday night matchup. The Ottawa Senators heavily favored, according to FanDuel, in this game. The line at the time of the recording, minus 176 for the Ottawa Senators, plus 146 for the Philadelphia Flyers. The Senators come in 8-7-0 on the season. The Flyers are 6-8-2. What makes you think this is a trap game?
Just because, Ross, I feel like this team has played so well up against other good teams on the road. Now they're coming home to a team that has not been that great this season. And like you mentioned earlier, they are in the midst of a rebuild. A lot of their prime assets are not NHL ready. Green bananas, as Jeff Merrick would say, not quite ripe enough to be playing in the NHL. But they do have a couple of youngsters that are looking pretty good so far. And they could surprise you. A team like that's coached by John Tortorella might end up working harder than you think.
They certainly have the players to work hard. You think of well, let's just go through the lineup first, and then we'll highlight a couple of players. But they certainly have some hardworking talent on this team, led by their captain, Sean Couturier, who's their top-line center, between Owen Tippett, who is a part of the return for Claude Giroux back when he was traded to the Florida Panthers, and former Ottawa 67 Travis Konechny. The second line is Scott Lawton with Joel Farabee and Bobby Brink. The third line, Ryan Poehling, is between Richard and Matvei Michkov. And the fourth line is Noah Cates with Tyson Forster, and Garnet Hathaway. On defense, Emil Andre with Travis Sanheim, Nick Seeler with Rasmus Ristolainen, and Igor Zamula with Eric Johnson. We expect Samuel Ersson to start in goal. Ivan Fedotov is their other tendy. Who's your lookout player to watch on the Flyers?
My lookout player is going to be Bobby Brink, Ross. Bobby Brink, I think Sens fans know him well because he was right in that range, drafted 34th overall in the same draft year as Shane Pinto. And as that second round was starting, Sens fans were looking at Pinto, Bobby Brink, and Arthur Kaliev, trying to decide who they think the Sens should take. The Sens go with Pinto. The right decision. But Bobby Brink is just kind of getting things started. And this season in 13 games, he's got 2 goals, 4 assists, good for 6 points. Last season in 57 games with the Flyers, he had 23 points. So he's starting to find his way in the NHL. And it's just interesting to watch a player that Sens fans thought was likely going to be picked by the Sens. And we'll see how he does on tonight's game with the Flyers.
I understand if some fans, Senators in particular, don't know a whole lot of players on this Flyers team. This is a, what did you call it? Video game franchise mode 10 years later?
Yeah, I was mentioning to you, it kind of looks like a roster that if you're in franchise mode in Shell in like 2033 and they're just making up names, that a lot of these guys are showing up.
My lookout player, though, is a player whose name is only going to become more and more prominent as the years go on in the NHL. Matvei Michkov, 7th overall pick in the 2023 draft. And it was one of those where, is he going to take 5 years to come over? Is it a Kirill Kaprizov situation? Nope. He ends up getting the ability to come over just after his D+1 season, and he's already got 12 points in 14 games. Now, couple questions about Matvei Michkov. Is he being set up for success playing on a checking line with Ryan Poehling as his center? But then you squint your eyes and you say, well, would Scott Laughton be much of a better playmaker for him down the middle? Scott Laughton's sitting in a top 6 role right now for the Flyers. So I think it's just a matter of finding where fits best for him. But on individual talent, there's no doubt that he's their all-star type player.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, he's a high draft pick. He was drafted 7th overall in the 2023 draft. Comes with a lot of expectations coming over from Russia. And he's having a pretty good year so far, Ross. 14 games, 5 goals, 7 assists, good for 12 points. Now, he is a -6, and he has been healthy scratched for a game recently, but he's picked it up. Last game up against the San Jose Sharks, he got a goal and an assist. So I think, Ross, this is probably also a case of a old school hardo coach and John Tortorella being like, hey, brand new rookies with all this pedigree, they don't just get a top 6 job no matter what the roster looks like. You got to make them earn it on the third line. At least that's how I'm kind of interpreting this. So it'll be interesting to see how that third line gets going with Michkov on the right side.
And if that game doesn't get to overtime, Matvei Michkov might have been a healthy scratch again. He took a boneheaded penalty going back and forth with the San Jose Sharks player. He got the only call, and they're lucky because that would have cost them the game. I just don't think that you can underestimate the Philadelphia Flyers based on their work ethic, based on, look, like even we just kind of went over their lineup, but Konechny, Laughton, Poehling, Cates, Forster, all these guys and Couturier bring a hardworking kind of power mentality. So Michkov's almost like, you know, the black sheep here, where he's the only guy that really brings a ton of talent and offensive threat. So if you're the Senators, just be aware when number 39's out there on the ice, and otherwise just worry about your own game, and you should be in for a successful evening in front of the home fans and a bounce back performance of sorts, because the Senators have been great overall at home this season, but you left with a pretty bad taste in your mouth last Thursday against the New York Islanders. So it's a big one for me. I think this is a really important game for Ottawa to show that the opponent doesn't matter. They're not going to play down to lower opponents and up to the good ones. You just have to be able to get out of the trap and just dominate the game by playing your in-your-face, up and down the ice hockey, puck possession, and offensive zone time. And the Senators should win this game.
Yeah, Ross, I agree. There's no reason if they play the same way they've played up against Toronto and Boston that they can't get a win up against the Philadelphia Flyers team at home. I agree. And I think one thing about the Flyers that I will note is this is a very good team on the penalty kill. Ross, you might be surprised to know they're second in the league in penalty kill percentage at 90.4%. So you talk about a team that doesn't have a lot of offensive firepower, but then you reference the hard work that they put in. That's a clear indicator to me that they're able to shut down some other team's power play, and they're able to do it 90% of the time with success.
Well, 100% of the time in their last 7 games. They are on a 17-for-17 run right now, shorthanded.
Be a shame if one of the league's top power plays were able to crack that.
Would be a real shame. Let us know in the comments what your key to victory is. Pillsy, instead of a final thought, I have a final question. In Mike Kelly's interview, he said just one team does not have the Sportlogiq analytics package. Let's guess. What team do you think that is?
Ross, if you would have asked me this, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, I would have said 100% without a doubt it is your Ottawa Senators. But with Sean Tierney here, new ownership, new management, I'm sure they're tapped into any analytics they can get their hands on. So it's not the Sens. And I would have said Arizona, but now that they're in Utah, that team surely wants to get things going, and they're spending money in analytics. Ryan Smith is an owner of a pro team in the NBA, so he knows all about analytics.
I'm pretty sure he's an analytics company. Qualtrics, isn't that like an AI analytics company?
Oh, I'm not sure, but that would reinforce my argument even more. You know what, Ross? Let's go with the division rival that has not made the playoffs in a long time. And 13 we're talking about Locked On Senators podcast, a team that has not made the playoffs during this entire show's duration. I mean, Buffalo Sabres, if you're not making the playoffs once every 13 years, you're probably not looking at the numbers. I don't know.
That's my guess as well. And I want to hear everyone else's guess. Just one team does not use it. That is so intriguing to me. Okay, game day tonight. We'll talk to you in the postcast after the Ottawa Senators take on the Philadelphia Flyers. If you're going to the game, make sure that it is not like the library we saw in Toronto on Tuesday night. Bring your 2 hands, put them together, and we will see you hopefully after a 3rd straight Sens win. For today, we say goodbye. Thank you to Mike Kelly for joining us. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.